In accordance with the leave granted earlier today, I call on the Honourable Chris Carter to make his valedictory statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all satisfying stories should have a clear beginning and a conclusive end. This is the conclusive end of my parliamentary story, but I hope not the end of any opportunities I might have to do some public good in the world. I'd like to use this opportunity to reflect on some of the highlights of the 15 years I've served as a Member of Parliament for Te Atatu. But before I do that, Mr. Speaker, I need to acknowledge some rather special people who are here today. This year, my partner, Peter Kaiser, and I celebrate 38 years as a couple. We met in 1973 when we were both very young students and have been together ever since. Nothing I have achieved in my life has been possible without his support and his energy. In politics, he's canvassed as many houses as me, delivered as many leaflets as me, attended as many conferences and regional meetings as me, raised the money for our party levies, and hosted numerous Labour Party functions in our home, including Helen Clark's 60th birthday party. He organised a lot, and as many of my former Labour colleagues can attest, without Peter's contribution, Auckland Regional Labour Party politics would have struggled, particularly during the difficult political period between 1993 and 98. He has served at all levels of the Labour Party up to and including the executive of the New Zealand Council, the ruling body of the party. He has served as an area representative and was chair of the Auckland Regional Council of the Labour Party for many years. Together, we founded Rainbow Labour, the gay and lesbian sector of the Labour Party. In the good times and the bad, he was always there for me and for the Labour Party. Many people, including me, urged him last year to take my place as the Labour MP for Te Atatu. He would easily have won this election and the election, but he wouldn't have a bar of it. Successful relationships are often difficult for MPs to sustain, as many in this House have found. The stresses of the job, living part of the week away from home for non-Wellington members, and the intrusion of media into our personal lives all have a high personal and relationship cost. Peter has put up with all the costs of being a reluctant public figure for me. He is a successful and popular school principal, and the last 2 years in politics have been enormously difficult and stressful for him, as media have unfairly dragged him into the spotlight. It's an acknowledgement of the respect that he has earned, that no matter how nasty or unfair media stories have been about us, he remains a much-loved, respected and valued member of his school community. To be honest, 15 years, Te Atatu and the Labour Party actually had 2 MPs for the price of 1. I know he's very happy that I'm leaving politics, but I will always be indebted to his support and contribution during the time I've been a politician. The children of MPs also have a heavy burden to bear. Our 3 children, Alice, Willem and Oliver, have not had an easy time with me as a public figure and are often worried about how they coped, particularly during the last year. I want to acknowledge today, for the record, my appreciation of the friendship and support of a large group of people in my electorate. Without their help and encouragement, I could not have achieved the support I won from my constituents. Jenny Atkins, the long-time secretary of our LEC, and her daughter Adele, Margaret Sutton and her family, Neville Tilsey, Bill Guy, John Edgar, Claudia Elliott, Shirley Swanepoel and Verity Davidson, Mary Bragg, George O'Donnell, Morris and Barbara Carlyle, also and Harold Hansen, Rex and Marilyn Hurley, Brian Hennigan, John Wakenshaw, Anne Parler, Mahendra Taylor, Camille Nakid and her husband George, Shane Misselbrook, Lincoln Dam, Pon Locke, Roy Clements, George Bache, Imad Khan, Hasib Metla, Zhang Shibo, and many, many more. Without the support of these friends and supporters, we could never have kept the Labour flag flying out west so successfully and won 5 elections so comfortably. I cannot thank them enough for their personal support and friendship. The unanimous support and repeated endorsement I received from my electorate committee last year meant a great deal to me. I probably appreciated even more, Mr. Speaker, their commitment over many years to knock on doors, dodge dogs, and deliver thousands and thousands of leaflets and target letters, fundraise, and provide me with their collective wisdom on everything from major policy issues to the content of my numerous electorate newsletters. Staff have always been very important to me and to my success as a politician. I can truthfully say, Mr. Speaker, that it was my staff more than anything else that I missed the most when I ceased to be a Cabinet Minister. I would like to acknowledge my two elected secretaries, Margaret Sutton and Diane Monteith. Margaret has been with me since the beginning in 1993, and her Irish background and sense of humour have seen us all through so much. Wendy Hogg, Shibo Zhang and Tao Ren were also long-time local staff and made a huge and valued contribution. Joy Bridge, Brian Hannigan, Latofa Tanilau and David Taylor were among the many volunteers that have helped out on a regular basis in my Henderson office. In 2000, Serge Sabalak, a recent immigrant from the former Yugoslavia, came as a Victoria University intern to my office. We discovered we had so much in common, even the same birthday. He came for 7 months and stayed for 7 years. Over time, he became more like a son to me than a staff member. As a minister, I had two skilled, wise and valued political advisors, Kevin Smith and Michael Gibbs. Both became friends as well as staff and did amazing work for me and for our country. For 5 years, Nick Manning was my long-suffering but much valued press secretary, advisor and friend. Others who made a huge difference to my success as a government minister included Richard Marshall, Gavin Rodley, Steve Boyd, Elizabeth Brown, Becky Chin, Elizabeth McMillan, Stephen Cross, Leroy Taylor, Jay Eden, Daniel King, Peter Gretzer, Simon Gilmore, Helen Latman and Brett de Melmuch. After the 2011 election, I had two parliamentary staff, David Hawkins and then Tim Carno. Both have served me and my constituents well. I owe them and my other staff a huge thank you for their loyalty and hard work. I'd also like to acknowledge the fine chief executives that I had the privilege of working with as a government minister. Hugh Logan and Al Morrison at DOC, Sonia Rathkin and Mervyn Singham at Ethnic Affairs, Chris Blake and Brendan Boyle at Internal Affairs, Katrina Baich at Building and Housing, Leslie McTurk and Pat Snedden at Housing New Zealand, and Karen Sewell at Education. The American politician, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tip O'Neill, made that famous quote, "All politics are local." The local, Mr. Speaker, was always the part of the job I loved the best. I've tried to work hard on behalf of my constituents. My majority at the last election was the highest of any Labour MP in West Auckland, even though Labour narrowly lost the party vote in my electorate. That personal support was earned by never taking support for granted and consistently providing a service. I can truthfully say that there is not a house in my electorate or a letterbox or probably even a dog that I do not know personally. Local achievements that I feel particularly satisfied about include saving at least half the Harbourview land in Te Atatu Peninsula as a public park, helping to expand public services at Waitakere Hospital, numerous local school projects, support for the Ark and the Park project in the Waitakere Ranges, and support with my two Labour colleagues in West Auckland for the Waitakere Ranges protection legislation. On a more personal level, the innumerable immigration, housing, ACC, IRD and other constituency cases that came through my local office often had a life-changing impact on individuals' lives. Nothing can be more satisfying than helping people in such a practical and direct way. At the end of any politician's time in Parliament, I imagine all of us will reflect on what was our legacy in Parliament. Did the time spent in this place make a difference to our country and its people? I'd like to think that the 15 years I spent here, particularly the 6 years I spent as a Cabinet Minister, did make a positive difference. I've always been a very goal-focused individual who wanted to get things done yesterday. Every ministerial job I had, and I was entrusted with quite a few, saw lots happening. I'd like to touch on just a few of the highlights. Conservation was the job I enjoyed the most. During the 5 years I spent as Conservation Minister, the longest anyone has held that position to date, over 360,000 hectares of land was added to the conservation estate, an area more than twice the size of Stewart Island. Of all my actions as a government minister, this land acquisition program on behalf of the public is the achievement I am most proud of. Long after I'm forgotten, I know that land will be protected, accessible and an asset for every New Zealander. The Cabinet approved the money, but my energy and determination drove the process forward. Other highlights for me were the gazetting of 17 new marine reserves, creating, Mr. Speaker, each one felt at times like fighting World War III, but marine reserves do work. This is a controversial process, and I'm not surprised that very few have been created since I left the job in 2007. Worried about the sale of private coastal camping grounds to property developers, I managed to gazette 100 new camping grounds on the Dock Estate while I was Minister. I also extended protection to a number of marine species, including the endangered great white shark. I particularly enjoyed the media announcement made in the Chathams in a wetsuit and underwater in a shark cage. No wonder my Cabinet colleagues often teased me about those photo opportunities I had as Conservation Minister. I signed staff agreements between DOC and the state conservation agencies in Italy, the Philippines, South Africa and Canada, giving my department expertise a chance to be shared with others globally. I negotiated and implemented regional assistance and training for Environment and Park Service staff from Papua New Guinea, New Caledonia, the Solomons, Tonga, Samoa, Niue and Fiji, a move that complemented New Zealand's regional assistance work in the Pacific. I battled Japanese, Norwegian and Icelandic whalers at 5 IWC meetings, putting New Zealand in the world spotlight as the most staunch anti-whaling nation. I initiated and actively pursued a huge number of individual biodiversity and recreational projects, the most exciting of which was Project Hauraki, the establishment of Rangitoto and Motutapu Islands in the Hauraki Gulf as pest-free, with the potential to become another Tiritiri Matingi on the doorstep of Auckland. None of these projects could have happened without, of course, my Cabinet colleagues' support and Cabinet approval, but I was the man entrusted to get the job done, and I relished doing it. For 6 years, I served as New Zealand's Minister of Ethnic Affairs. Again, to date, the longest any individual has held that particular portfolio. Mr. Speaker, being Minister of Ethnic Affairs was not a job Cabinet colleagues were queuing up to take. Why was that? Well, quite simply, the workload. If you valued any free time on weekends, being Minister of Ethnic Affairs was not a job for you. Over 6 years, I visited almost every mosque, Gurdwara, that's a Sikh temple, Buddhist temple, Hindu temple and synagogue in New Zealand, and there are an awful lot of them. I celebrated Buddha's birthday on numerous occasions at temples in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. I watched kabaddi competitions, a sort of Punjabi bull rush, at Sikh temples, was splattered with paint powder at Hindu holy festivals, attended religious services for Indian Christians, Greek Catholics, Iraqi Christians, Lebanese Christians and Russian Orthodox, was splashed with water at Sokran, the Thai water festival, danced the night away at Nowruz, Iranian New Year, celebrated each year Eid and launched the annual Islam Awareness Week and enjoyed Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. Over the last 10 years, Mr. Speaker, I must have attended at least 60 Diwali events, countless Chinese New Year events, as well as the annual Hindu Navratri festival. In addition to these religious services, most of the over 184 different national and ethnic groups who make up modern New Zealand also like to celebrate their national days as a focus for their community members resident in New Zealand. The drums of Ghana's, Burundi, Rwanda, the Congo and Nigeria's national days became as familiar to me as the traditional dances of Croatia, Bulgaria, Russia, Ukraine, Korea and Romania. On one notable occasion, Mr. Speaker, in 2005, I attended 8 ethnic festivals in Auckland on one Saturday, followed by 5 more the next day. Significant achievements that I'm proud of completing during those years as Ethnic Minister included the establishment of Language Line, a professional telephone interpreting service using 39 languages that allowed people with little or no English to access government services. The Connecting Diverse Communities Work Programme, a whole-of-government approach containing more than 70 initiatives across government agencies to improve policies aimed at strengthening positive relations between diverse ethnic, cultural and religious groups. The Building Bridges initiative, launched in 2006 in conjunction with the New Zealand Federation of Islamic Associations to help dispel Muslim stereotypes in the post-9/11 environment. The Cultural Awareness and Communication Program, which saw the Office of Ethnic Affairs staff provide specialist services, advice and training to other government agencies to help facilitate better cultural and religious understanding in New Zealand. The initiation of the annual UK-New Zealand dialogue on multicultural communities and exchange of policies and best practice between my Office of Ethnic Affairs and the UK Department of Community and Local Government. Helen Clark's decision for Parliament to celebrate annually Chinese New Year, the Hindu festival and the Muslim festival of Eid, which of course is happening tonight, was a message to all of New Zealand that our country was now home to many cultures and religions, and all of them have value and are part of our evolving national identity. I also initiated at Parliament during my time as Minister the celebration of Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and a significant celebration in 2008 of 150 years of Croatian settlement in our country. Other ministerial jobs that I had included that of Minister of Local Government, which saw me responsible for the passage of the new Local Government Act in 2002 and a major overhaul of dog legislation, always a very controversial subject. As Minister of Building Issues, I was responsible for the passage of the new Building Act in 2004 and a review of the Residential Tenancies Act in the same year, and the passage of the Retirement Villages Act during my time in that portfolio. I had a brief spell as Acting Minister of Pacific Island Affairs and was appointed Housing Minister in 2005. I'm proud that under my watch, Housing New Zealand increased the quantity of social housing by another 1,923 housing units, increased the provision of community group housing units, and introduced a shared equity scheme to allow better opportunities to boost first home ownership. We also significantly expanded the Community Renewal Program, which saw big concentrations of social housing undergo major renovation and community development. My last job in government, Mr. Speaker, was as Education Minister. As a former teacher, I was immensely proud to be promoted to the 7th ranked cabinet position, responsible for New Zealand's education system. When Helen Clark informed me I was going to be appointed Education Minister, she said I'd done such a good job selling the Labour-led government's successes in conservation that we had an equally great story to tell in education. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, Labour had. Over 8 years, Labour had doubled the education budget from $5 billion to $10 billion. The Capital Works program for schools alone was an astonishing $3.3 billion. 42 new schools were built, and expenditure on early childhood education increased by 281%. Two personal education initiatives I was very proud of were a major package to try and address the scourge of bullying in schools and a ban on the sale of junk food in school tuck shops. Both at the time were condemned by the opposition as PC and the nanny state gone mad. Yet surely keeping students safe and trying to address the rising rate of childhood obesity was just plain good sense. I was very proud of these and the many other investments Labour made in the educational sector during our time in office. I only had 14 months in the job, but I worked hard to justify Helen Clark's faith in me. During that time, Mr. Speaker, I personally visited 327 schools and early childhood centres to see education in practice. I hope my presence and interest encouraged the excellent teaching and learning I witnessed happening in our classrooms. Mr. Speaker, I was the first MP to openly acknowledge being gay, although I'm sure I wasn't the first gay MP to enter this Parliament. Why did I choose to be the first to be open about my different sexuality? As a former teacher, I knew that gay and lesbian teenagers faced huge amounts of prejudice and had few affirming messages or positive role models. By being open and honest about my sexuality, and joined soon by my industrious gay colleague, Tim Barnett, and my remarkable transsexual Labour colleague, Georgina Beyer, we broke a glass ceiling. Today, having gay and lesbian MPs is no big deal, and thank goodness for that. In 2007, I met a beautiful young Māori woman in Melbourne who told me as a 15-year-old she had been seriously contemplating suicide because of her sexuality. I had come to her school prize giving, and my presence, she said, convinced her that being gay was not a barrier to personal success. She told me tearfully that I had saved her life. That story alone, Mr. Speaker, made it all worthwhile. The The people that have inspired me in this place have included Helen Clark, a remarkable and inspirational leader who made me proud to be a New Zealander. Michael Cullen, a man who knew how to build and maintain a strong economy. Margaret Wilson, Steve Mahari, David Longy, individuals of great intellectual ability. My friends, Jonathan Hunt, Charles Chevelle, Leanne Dalziel, Bill Pettis, Martin Gallagher, Judith Tizard, Mark Burton, David Benson Pope, Rick Barker, Ashraf Chowdhury, Raymond Kaur, Rajin Prasad and George Hawkins. Thanks for your support and friendship, often rare commodities in this place. The last year has not been easy, but now is the time to look forward and not back. I am and will always be a Labour person. I still consider myself a Labour MP, and I still believe passionately in social democracy and that the Labour Party has the best philosophy for ensuring social justice and providing effective pathways to realising individual potential. The state should and must play a positive role in providing services and creating opportunity for all. I will remind those who seek leadership here in Parliament that strong leadership is about strong policies, rooted not in opportunism, pandering to the press gallery, but in values that reflect your own political philosophy and your own personal ethics. Loyalty is a two-way process. It is earned and is not an automatic right. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Greens, who have been so kind to me. You truly have the nicest political culture here at Parliament, and I want to thank Green MPs for all the support you've given me this year. Mr. Speaker, where to from here, for me? I've been appointed to a senior UN position, and I look forward to making, over the next few years, a contribution to the UN's global mission. It's time for a change for me, but I will always consider that it was an honour and a privilege to have served as a West Auckland representative here in Parliament for 15 years. Thank you very much.
Order, the House is suspended for the dinner break. I'll resume the chair at 7:30 p.m.